good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're connecting from across the globe. We're delighted to have you join us for this online ritual to celebrate living the change. This is a joyous occasion to come together as an international and interfaith movement to make changes towards sustainable living. In this time together, we have the opportunity to align ourselves with our deepest faith values and strengthen our commitment of our responsibility to care for each other and the wider world. Before we begin, we invite you to have pen and paper ready so you can write down your own thoughts, feelings, and commitment. So before we begin, let us ground ourselves by connecting with the breath, inviting awareness and gratitude for being alive in this moment, in this lifetime, on our precious earth. Let us take a moment to reflect on the gift of our common home.
In this ritual time of sharing, we will take 3 moments of deepening our journey together. These sequential moments will be a spiritual grounding, a reflection about our potential to change our behavior, and then a time for making commitments. To begin with our collective spiritual grounding, we'd invite you to reflect upon these questions. What is it that inspires you? What guidance and motivation does your religion or your spiritual tradition provide to inform you with your choices in life? Here are some quotes drawn from our different world traditions and universal statements about our human condition and our interconnectedness that may resonate with you. Please note that these are only a very small sample from the rich offerings that you can find on the Living the Change website.
This is from the Quaker World Gathering in 2016. Our faith is inseparable from our care for the health of our planet Earth. We must redouble our efforts, move beyond our individual and collective comfort zones. We can do more.
Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche from Sacredness, the Warrior's World. You can't help society purely on the basis of your vision for the nation or the world. These and other ideas may have value, but they must be integrated with an individual human being's experience of domestic life. Otherwise, you have a huge gap between your grand vision for society and the reality of everyday existence.
From the Hindu tradition, there is a text called the Targa Veda, and in there are 63 prayers in glorification of the earth, known as the Bhumi Shukta. One of those prayers is my favorite and sums up the Hindu worldview of the earth. It is simply, the earth is my mother and I am her child.
From Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si, there is a nobility in the duty to care for creation through little daily actions.
From our 2017 interfaith statement delivered at COP23 and named Walk on Earth Gently. Let us pray and hope we can come together in love for each other, those who suffer from climate change, future generations, and planet Earth. Let us commit to walk gently on Earth.
Thank you. In hearing all these quotes and seeing a few more now appearing on the screen, we'd invite you now to reflect. What motivates you to take action in caring for our Earth, our common home? Take a moment now to write down your thoughts on paper. These will sustain you on your own journey.
So you may ask yourself, why should we do that? And what kind of behaviors are we actually talking about? We have identified the behavior changes that make the greatest difference possible towards a low carbon lifestyle. And we've seen research that shows conclusively that in a large majority of contexts, those three behaviors matter most. First, transport. That means to dramatically reduce our car and air travel. Second is home energy use. How can we conserve energy better? How can we make it more efficient? How do we switch to 100% renewable energy? And thirdly, diet. Moving towards a plant-based diet and only having meat for extremely special occasions and reducing food waste can make a big difference. So to make the biggest impact, we ask you and invite you with Living the Change to focus on one of these areas. And asking the big why to yourself, you may wonder, why should I do that? What can drive me? And in our next period of reflection, we will consider on the value of our personal actions and also take time to deepen and honor our connection and gratitude to the greater whole. Let us reflect together for a moment on our relationship with those elements that we consume and rely upon every day. We invite you on reflections on what drives our behavior. Here are a few questions. On food. What do we eat? What do we take in? Where does it come from? And what's the value of creation in our food? On energy. What is energy actually? And how do we take responsibility and carefully use energy? Transportation. How do we move? And why do we move? Why is it important to me to move? And I invite you to reflect on our potential to change our own personal behavior and lifestyles for the sake of the common good, for the well-being of future generations, and for the benefit of all. Let us reflect on our ability to commit to personal change in the three high-impact areas of food, energy, and transportation. And I now invite you to hear some personal examples that can inspire you and excite you. Calling on Irene to share with us about her food commitment.
Thank you. So when I first was beginning to think about what commitment I was going to make, because I consider myself somewhat of a lazy person, the first thing that came up for me was I can change my food habit. And I told my family about this, and my son, who likes books, sent me this cookbook. And this is not an advertisement, but it's a great book. Super Fun Times Vegan Holiday Cookbook. I started to cook from this. And I'm proof that you can teach an old dog new tricks. At 66, I'm changing my habits, and it's invigorating, and my family's enjoying it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Irene. I'm inviting Laurie to share about his energy commitment.
Well, for millennia, humans used only the energy we could capture by growing crops and trees or keeping animals. But in rich societies, we depend on massive consumption of fossil fuels, deep stores of ancient sunlight, which we use up at the flick of a switch. People in some countries still only use a kilo or two of wood a day for all of their energy needs. And that feels to me like a good benchmark for sustainable living. It's about 3,000 kilowatt hours a year, and it's about the amount of energy I hope to collect with solar panels on the roof of my house. Living within that limit means being conscious of energy in everything and of its preciousness. It has meant rethinking how I wash, how I cook, how I stay warm and travel. Sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable. Some things take longer. And sometimes, maybe often, it seems odd to other people. But to me, it feels awake, healthy, whole, and joyful.
Thank you for sharing your commitment, Laurie. And I'm inviting Gopal to share on his transport commitment.
So much. Over the last 6 months, I've been asking myself these questions. How do I move? Why do I move? And why is it important to me? And it's been difficult, it's been fun, it's been exciting. And I've developed what I'm calling a Gopal travel policy. And I'd love to share that with you today. I realized that most of my transportation is for work. I live in New York City, so I use the subway and I walk quite a lot. I don't currently use a car, and I'm going to stick to that policy of not having a car whilst living here in America. When I do need to travel for work, I'm going to ensure that I use public transportation as much as possible. And if that's not possible, to carpool with colleagues. And if I'm flying for work, I'm going to ensure that my flights are direct, not indirect flights, and also work with the organizations with which I'm associated to develop travel policies so that, for example, when we do fly somewhere, that we offset that carbon or we offer something to the community to which we're traveling. And also using software like this Zoom platform we're using today for this beautiful service, to use teleconferencing, video conferencing services as much as possible. As I ask myself these questions, how I move, why it's important, I realized that for me, it's important to reciprocate with the love and the gifts that the earth gives to me, and to give back and not to harm. And so that's my travel policy.
Thank you very much, Irene, Laurie, and Gopal. And it seems like it's very possible to make those changes.
Thank you. Well, now its time has come. We'd like to invite you to make your own commitments. Here are some questions that you might like to consider when you think about what commitments you could make. What are the areas in your life where you would like to make changes? And in which of these areas could you make meaningful commitment? We'd like to encourage you to have big thoughts we'd like you to consider making real changes in your own lives. But it's your choice. This is something that comes from each individual and is an inner decision. Recognize that these voluntary changes are in fact a generous gift that you are giving both to your own life and also to the future of the wider world. Take a moment now to write down your own commitments to living the change. While you're thinking and writing, to make this more concrete, it's worth looking at 3 time horizons. Why not think about what you might be able to do in the next 2 days? And then you could think about what changes you might be able to make in the next 2 weeks. And finally, what are the bigger changes in life that you may be able to work towards and achieve perhaps over a couple of months? And along this journey, we really want to acknowledge that it's no small thing to make a personal commitment. So we honor you for being here today and listening to this webinar, and for taking some time to reflect on these changes that you can make in your own life as a gift to Mother Earth and to all future generations. Thank you. On the screen now, you can see a selection of choices that are available on the online commitment tool. And you can see they fall in these 3 categories of transport, energy, and food. We'll pause to reflect these variety of choices.
And now we would like to celebrate your commitment. So hopefully you feel the celebration that we're sharing with you around the globe as you make these positive changes to care for our common home with all of us. So for those of you now within reach of the internet, we invite you to go to the Living the Change website and register your commitment. In the top right-hand corner, you'll see an orange box with windmills and a bicycle that says make my commitment, where you can do so. When you enter your personal commitment, know that all of our small commitments will add up over time to create a massive movement for change. So thank you for being a part of this ritual, and let us continue to go forward together with joyful determination to work together towards a flourishing world. Thank you. I would also like to thank my colleagues that joined on this ritual from around the globe. We had Philippa, a Buddhist from Australia, Lori, Quaker from the UK, Caroline, Protestant from Germany, Gopal, Hindu from the United States, Irene, Buddhist from the United States, and myself, Christina, Roman Catholic, also in the United States. So thank you for being with us, and please share the word to make a commitment on living the change.